Hey everybody, how's it going today? Thanks for joining me. As always, I'm trying to go back to the weekly schedule, as my Scottish family would say, schedule. Um, all right, so first thing is always thanks to everybody for being here, all the usuals. And I have my Blues Bootcamp on sale for 72% off, as opposed to 75% off. I don't make these numbers. And that is what was my 6-week boot camp. Some of you guys might have that. If not, it's now available for you to do at your own pace as a course. And you can, it's a really huge course. I'm never going to make anything that large a course again because it's a huge course. It's over 7 hours. So it's great. I think it's great. I will say that. I think it's great because it breaks down a really straightforward way to learn how to play the blues in a guided way. I break everything down. Each lesson builds upon the previous, so you have some very specific things to practice. All the things that I've found that helped me play better and teach better too. And students have seen progress. Hundreds of people have taken the course, and now you can too. All right, so thanks for BB, as always, doing this last minute, because I am a last minute kind of guy. And I've got a new setup here, sort of. So hopefully things I'm working through. Change some computer stuff up. Anyway, so hopefully seems like everything's working from all my tests yesterday of going, seeing the audio's matching up and everything like that. Okay, so today we're going to talk about things that I don't give a beep about anymore. Or maybe a little bit, but some things I really don't. And some of the joys of getting a little older, besides the things that are not fun about getting older, are things that I don't really care about anymore. And I like to talk about them because I think it's important because there's so much stuff out there. And, the internet, I can be guilty of it too. We're stuff, the newest, latest, greatest, this or that, the other. So let me go through some of my list of things that don't matter to me as much now. And I'd love to see what you guys have, what you find that this used to be really important to me as a guitar player, and now I really don't care. All right, so technique things I don't care about anymore. I don't care about shredding as much as I used to. It used to be really important to me to get my chops super high. Maintaining my chops is still very important to me. But everybody's got chops nowadays. Like everybody and their grandmother. It's crazy. Through the advent of YouTube, technique, everybody, you go on Instagram, it's insane. Everybody's got a ton of chops, 10-year-old kids. So it's not as impressive as it used to be. I mean, I give people credit where it's due. I'm not detracting people from that do that. I'm just not as interested in it anymore. I'm much more interested in saying something and being the player that I want to be and hearing what's in my head, helping come to the instrument. Now, that doesn't mean I don't practice technique at all. I like the technique I want to work. I still want to increase my technique and make it better, but I want to make it more solid and I want to make it to be able to translate what's in my head. Now, the cool thing is the more you practice your technique, the more sometimes you hear these things. But there was a driving goal for a very long time of having really amazing technique. And though I do have very good technique, of course, but the desire to keep that going has really kind of diminished greatly because I just don't care as much because I don't find myself attracted to that kind of music anymore. So that's one thing that I think is really, really important. Things that really specific things. Like I used to be really into every finger has a right, coming from that 80s shred background of every finger, every fret has a finger. Now that can be very important for certain things. And then as I started, kind of watching people like Pat Metheny or Eric Clapton or Eddie Van Halen, didn't use their pinky as much. So things that I thought to be like the guitar police would come out and say, you're supposed to be using your pinky on that. Or I had these ideas. I don't care about anymore. Whatever way I can get this thought out of my head and out to the guitar. So I've found that I'm using my pinky a little less than I used to. And I think it's cooler because I'm using the third finger more efficiently. It is longer than the pinky. So the pinky I still use the pinky all the time. But what I'm getting at is like I used to work really hard about having this sort of flawless, perfect technique of each finger is doing the same thing, the right thing. Now that it's depending on the style of music that you play. If you're into Alan Holdsworth and things like that, you need to be able to do these sort of things. I'm not doing that. So I found that more succinctly, what works for me is the thing I want to practice on, right? So I'm not as worried about like I said, invisible guitar police coming out of the closet and saying, hey, you're not using the right finger on that. Alternate picking, or, alternate picking, getting a lot of speed that way. Hammer-ons and pull-offs. Once again, when I analyzed guys like my favorites who had a lot of chops, Yngwie, Eddie, there's lots of hammer-ons and pull-offs going on. So this pure sort of alternate picking monster technique that if you want to do that, that's great. That became less important to me because I just don't care anymore. As long as I can play what I want to play. All right. So also in performances, if I hit a clam, I definitely get bummed out, because it's a concentration issue. But I kind of move forward from it now, and I just kind of roll through it. And if the vibe is there, that's more important. And I think the problem with some of this stuff is the internet. Everybody's there with the phone, and then it's suddenly on the internet the next day or something. And, if it wasn't a perfect performance, it's there in perpetuity, which is really a drag because that's not what music's about. So I used to be more worried about that, and now I kind of just go for if the vibe's there. Now, if I'm recording a record, there's a certain level of that I'm going to adhere to. If it's a mess, I'm going to be upset, or I'm not going to leave it. But if it's imperfect, I'm just going to leave it. Like so, some of that recording the intro tune, it's done many years ago, but all the guitars were live. I just overdubbed some rhythm guitar stuff. Excuse me. So that recording is pretty much a live recording, and I listened back, a little funky on the notes there. But my friend who was producing, who's no longer with us sadly, was like, "No, man, you got to leave that. The vibe's there." And this was done way before. I think it was recorded onto tape or ADAT or something, that first record. So it was really hard to really repair those things like it is now. So I just let it go. So it irks me, but, it was a moment in time. Okay. So the gear, the technique stuff, I've really kind of backed off. I just want to make sure that my technique is solid and I'm enjoying playing guitar. I'm not really as worried about, the shredding or being compared to someone like that. It just doesn't interest me anymore. Okay. Gear. Let's talk about gear. Now, I know I am in a ridiculous position to have some of the finest gear. I am. I am. But I've found that I'm kind of less interested in it in a lot of ways. I know what I like the sound of. I like the sound of a Marshall, pretty much, ultimately. And as a professional, I have stuff that I've acquired through the years, and I love the sound of my two rocks and all those things. But I just found myself plugging into, one or two different amps, if I'm fortunate to have them. I always find myself happy if I'm plugging into a Fender Princeton, So the gear thing can be exhausting, and that's why I don't do a lot of gear reviews. I talk about stuff, but I just find it, I start trying to make everything sound roughly the same, and everything that I play sounds kind of the same. And that's because that's the way I sound. You've heard people talk about this, like, they plugged into Eddie's gear, and they sounded like them playing through Eddie Van Halen's amp. Same thing, like any of my friends play through my gear, they just sound like them. So I find things that are kind of things I grew up playing, something a bit more of a Marshall-y sort of sound. I think the Bloomfield Drive gets that kind of thing. I attach with a Dumble sound pretty comfortably too. But if I'm stuck on a Fender Twin, I'm not very happy, generally speaking, for me, because you never get them loud enough. But Marshall or like that Dumble-y thing are things that I just really kind of sit in with really nicely. So my gear lust has dropped dramatically in a lot of years. And somebody's like, exhausting and expensive. Absolutely. I'll get to your comments in a minute too, but yeah, it's exhausting and expensive. And you end up not practicing, and you're always thinking that this next pedal is going to make all the difference in the world. And it's not. And I look back at favorite guitar players had one or two amps that they would use the whole time. So we live in a golden age of guitar and gear, and I love that. But sometimes it is exhausting, and it takes me away from practicing or working on the things that I think make me most happy. Um, like overdrives. I have so many overdrive pedals, and I end up trying to make them all that all sound the same. Once again, you know what I mean? I'm like, and I'm lucky enough. I love the ones that I have, but I like a few circuits, and there's all these variants on them. But I plug in, and I just always seem to come back to the same ones, and that's pretty interesting. So I'm feeling like I've really backed off on any of this kind of new gear because I've got some really great stuff, of course, but I just like it, and I'm like, why am I? What am I chasing here? And one of the big things to keep in mind is volume. You know, one of the things we miss when we're playing at our homes at a lower volume, at the bedroom level, is the volume of the whole thing. The second you start turning up an amplifier, whether it's a decent amp, like a decent tube amp or some boutique thing, it's the volume that makes all the difference. A tube amp doing what it's supposed to do in front, and you standing in front of it at volume, whatever that volume is, where the amp is working, that's the magic. So we chase our tail so much trying to find that magic at a home volume, which is very, very difficult to do. So kind of have that feeling now, like if I want a different amp or something like that. It's just because I'm frustrated that I have not gigged at a volume or don't do it regularly enough, or I'm just bored and I get sucked into what we all do at times, like that consumerism thing of like more stuff is better, and sometimes you miss the less stuff, if that makes sense, right? That pared down, if you had your two guitars and you had your nice amp and that's all you had, and you just worked with what you had. So I fall in the middle on that, but that is something that I don't care as nearly as much about anymore. They got, oh, check out this guitar, it's great. I'm like, whatever. Like, it's great. Yeah, that's great for you. Great. you know. We talked about this stuff a little bit. Certainly like the boutique pedals and things like, is a Klon worth it? No. I mean, if you got a ton of money, sure, but there's so many Klon clones that sound amazing, sound exactly the same. And all these things really start to disappear like new old stock tubes, which I like them because they can sound really good, but I like them because they last a long time. But as soon as the drummer starts playing, if you're playing a gig, all those things go away, really. So I try not to get too obsessed with that. Like dumbbells, like who can afford one? And are they that much better than a two-rock or something? The people who own them will always say yes. And having played a bunch of them and having the great honor of owning, being a two-rock endorser, I played them back to back, and they both sounded pretty darn close to me. So, I think those things that the wants versus the needs. All right. Tone wood. We've talked a little bit about that. Guitars sound different. If the guitar sounds good, the guitar is good. How's that? So whether it's an inexpensive guitar or a really expensive one, that's all I care about. Like, do I pick up the guitar? Does it make me want to play it? Do I feel like there's a song in it? Do you know what I mean? Like when I start playing, going, yeah, I think I'm gonna play this thing. I'm feeling attracted to this guitar, and I don't want to put it down. And that's the main thing. There are things I look for in a guitar, but I'm not gonna. It doesn't have to do with the price tag of the guitar. So, woods can make a difference, but I've played definitely really inexpensive guitars that sound great. Just look at those PRS SE lines. They're just great. They're great. All right. Analog versus digital pedals. Who cares? Which one sounds good? Which one is the easiest one to use? That's a big one. Same thing like I said with the tube snobbery. I try to stay away from it. One, because sometimes you can hear the difference. If you got a really nice amp, you can hear it, and then you're like, oh, how much is this going to cost me? So it comes down to the AB, the law of, I remember Wayne Krantz talking about this. He said, never AB. If you like your amp or your guitar or your pedals that we have around it, don't AB it to something else, because then you're going to be bummed, and then you're going to start thinking about the other thing and working through that. So there is a bit of truth to that. I've spent so much time, going back and forth between two freaking overdrive pedals, and then the next day you're like, I don't really hear a difference. You know what I mean? I really don't think about it. Well, I'll obsess about it, and then the next day I'm like, what a waste of time that was. It all sounds the same. All right, vintage gear. All right, so I got a bunch of thoughts on vintage guitar as a guy who owns some vintage gear. First of all, it comes down to how much money you have. I got into them at an earlier point when things were not as crazy as they are now. They were crazy, and I sold a bunch of guitars. I'm glad I did it, so I went through it. But you guys watch my channel a fair amount. I'm thinking, what are the guitars that I play all the time? Is this, and one of my DGTs. I have an old Strat, and I have an old Les Paul. I don't play them that much. I love them, and they sound great, but for where my playing is at and where I'm at, I just want something that's going to play easier, have no issues, and the only moment of when does this vintage Strat sound better than this is when you go back and forth in A-B. I'm like, well, that's got this quality, and that's got this quality. But every time I play this, I'm completely satisfied and really happy because the playability by Michael is just off the charts. It sounds great. And I just find myself leaning towards this. So I've talked to a few of my friends about this. Corey Congilio talk about this stuff all the time. He had that vintage bug for a while, got a few things. And now all he's playing, is like his Collings and, like another guitar, neither of which are vintage. So the vintage thing is cool. They can sound amazing, and really great ones do, and they sound super amazing. But sometimes, depending on the way you play guitar, they can, there's a playability factor that some of them don't have. My old Strat plays great. It doesn't play like this. So, then of course there's the thing of just worrying about them. Of course they're insured, but you're gonna run around with a vintage guitar all the time. It's an investment, so I don't give a hoot about it as much. Vintage amps. Like this is an old 72 Super Lead. I was bumped into Mitch Colby the other night, the amp guru Mitch Colby at Sonny Landra's show, and we were talking for a bit. And I was thinking about, this has got a problem. It's got like a hum in it. And I was joking around. I said, yeah, it seems like every time I turn it on and it sounds great. And then a few weeks later, I'm like, what's that noise? And he's like, yeah, it's a 50-something-year-old amp. So there's a lot of maintenance involved with old amps. They can sound amazing for sure, but there's just, it's a lot of maintenance. So sometimes this thing has cost me more to keep on up to fixing the things, because you try to keep all the original parts as much as you can. And then you're just like, how much money did I just put in this thing again? Like, didn't I just have this done? And now the mid knob is shot from 1972. Like, that's making a lot of weird noises now. So, the vintage thing, and like even vintage pedals, especially with the tone suck and all those things, sometimes it's just not worth it. Seriously. And I've played a ton of vintage guitars, and some of them are great, and some of them just are really not that great. Another thing, okay, so see what you guys have. So I'll keep on going on about this stuff. Right, I have my notes here, so I put, finicky vintage amps. If it needs a seance to turn it on, I'm going to pass, is what I thought was kind of funny. And stuff that, like people get crazy. I get a lot of collectible things. Like my 64 Strat has the purple wire as opposed to the white wire or whatever, the gray wire in the pickups. And that's a different thing, and that's a different sound. And this wire, and then, this was wrapped on this machine, and this person did this, and all. It's like, a lot of it is just nonsense. A lot of it's just nonsense. It really is, Either the guitar sounds good or it doesn't. Okay. A thing that a lot of people in the world I'm in, YouTube, gigs, working with companies and things, I talked to a lot of my friends about this as well. Like, the YouTube world can be really competitive. I'm not so much competitive with the guys who I'm friends with, but there's always that friendly thing, like how many likes did they get and how big is their channel versus my channel. I started to kind of get less concerned about it. I'm just wanting to do what I like doing and appreciate guys like yourself who come in here and let me blab and stuff like this, So just finding a lot of appreciation for, working hard in what you have, and then not having, like, being jealous about somebody else's channel having more views than yours is kind of silly. Because there's lots of ways I could make the channel probably bigger, but then it would require me doing stuff that I don't really love doing, like a lot more gear demos or like clickbaity stuff or those kind of things. Not really where my head's at. So lately, I just don't care as much. I'm really into working on my new record, and it's all I want to do. And I feel like all my favorite musicians were like that. The classic ones, or even the great ones. Did Eddie worry about that? He just was doing his thing, and that's why it was so great. Okay, Holy Grail tone, that kind of thing. I don't know. It kind of changes every week sometimes. like I said, that comes down to a lot of times volume. If you go on your gig and you turn up. Okay, so let me ask you guys what you think. I'm going to go over here and take any questions. But what's one thing you don't care about anymore that you did as a guitar player growing up? Like, did you buy that pedal that everybody was buying and you got it and you're like, well, this is ridiculous. Why did I buy this? I decided I don't do any nighttime buying. That's when I buy dumb stuff. Like, I think I need that pedal. Like, why did I buy that? Right? So, all right, so we got some comments here. What is your favorite pedal of all time? That's a good question. I saw it earlier. Let me go by what is the pedal that's been on my pedal board the longest, and that is the El Capistan by Strymon. Yeah, I've got the new version now. That pedal, I love that pedal. I've played many different delay pedals, and I think they all sound great. I'm just so used to that pedal, and then they upgraded it, and I think it sounds better, a little more functionality. It just always sounds right to me because I use it all the time. I'm looking into expanding some more sounds because of the new record and where my head's going. And so I'm looking into some other stuff. I have a timeline that I bought. I bought like 2 or 3 of them through my life, and I've just never got into programming. And I have one that I've had for a little while, and somehow the encoder button on it got bent, so it doesn't work. It's like the thing was like 6 months old, and somehow this thing got bent. So I got to send it back to the company. So I'm back to my El Capistan, which I just love. So I would say if there's a favorite pedal, that's one that I'm just completely used to, it's going to be that. As a steady, if you're talking about a straight-on overdrive, like what would be, you're going to plug into an amp, it's probably the Vemram Shanks. I've been using that for a really long time and a big fan of that pedal. But if there's one pedal that I've had forever, it would be the El Capistan and a Klon-type pedal. It's kind of like them, got used to it. I used to have the original ones. I had 2 in my life. Sold them both for what I thought was outrageous amount of money, and I don't regret it. I have a Klon KTR, which is on the board, which I really like, but the Tumnus, the Manus by Keeley, like there's so many things that just sound so much like it. I wouldn't even consider buying an old one anymore. Well, I wouldn't, because that's absurd to pay that much money. I had one and I sold it because I think it was just too much. Also, with something like a Klon, the switch can go, like, it's mechanical, so something's going to break at some point. And, a lot of it's just that kind of, show-offing thing at times. They sound great. If you have one and you love it, then fantastic. They're awesome. A good sounding Klon is a really, I like them a lot. All right. Let's see. This is from Bill. I've been through the boot camp and it's great, and the content really helped me. That's awesome, man. It's 70%, 50% off. That's a steal of a price. I agree. Thank you so much. I own a Strandberg, but I really do care about a headstock. Now, I had the Strandberg that Keith let me borrow, and I think they're awesome and cool. I just didn't super attach to it, like bond with it. I love the ergonomics. I love the size of it. So if I'm going to travel, that'd be fun. Um, but I just, yeah, just like a regular guitar a little better, you know. Transparent. I promised myself not to buy any overdrive distortion pedals until MXR released their Rockman X100. Yes, well worth it getting the X100. Um, I got to like how, oh, this is from Victor B. What's up, Victor? I have to like how my electric sounds unplugged. Oh, for sure. Right. That's the main thing. We talked about that, I think. When I pick up an electric, I just strum it acoustically and see if it sounds good. Now, of course, like sort of the opposite to that is if you pick up, I've played some, you know, like 12-pound Les Paul Customs that sound amazing, but they didn't seem to really resonate that well when you played them. But when you plugged them into an amp, they sounded great. But I'm not going to play a 12-pound guitar. So I do look for a guitar that I find pleasing to play acoustically. Does it feel resonant on my body? Is it, you know, I think we talked about, oh, hold on, let me take a sip. You know, does it have a, when I pluck that high E string, kind of feel it in the body? And that's one of the main criteria that I look for in any electric guitar. If I can kind of feel it and I hear the B string really ringing, the guitars do get better over time. They just do. They do. They open up. Acoustics more than electrics, but electrics definitely do open up if you play them. So I look for that first. You know, does the guitar resonate on my body? Because that's just the way I want it to sound and play. You know, so those are things that I look for sure. But like my point earlier, that could be a really inexpensive guitar too. It doesn't need to be a really, really expensive one. Oftentimes a really well-made guitar like by Michael, you're going to do away with some of the things that could cause it not to resonate, like a loose neck pocket and those things like that. Okay. Beaver said, yeah, don't forget the 9-volt DC positive on a Klon. Yeah, like that can get you into trouble. You got to make sure you plug that in properly. Honestly, man, that was one of the reasons why I was like, I don't want to even plug this thing in wrong because I moved my pedal board around so much. I was just like, you know, just go with a regular power source because you could blow the power on that. I've seen people do it. So I had an early clone, an early one, and someone had a switch that could go between battery and that, and I plugged it in. He's like, oh, you have to make sure the switch was down, so it blew right away because it had the 9-volt battery and the DC going in. So that was a design flaw, if you ask me. I understand what he's trying to do, but I smelled a little bit of smoke and the pedal didn't work, so I fried out the power supply just by plugging it in. So you're totally right. Would you ever gig an ugly guitar? Sure, if it were great, absolutely. You know, some people give me grief about playing PRSs because they're too fancy. I like them because they play great and they sound great, and it's like it was not something I initially gravitated towards, but after playing them, and once again, not giving a crap anymore, I like them. They sound great, they play great, they match my playing very well. So, yeah. I got people like, oh, that's a nice, you know, to come with a law degree or something like that. And I'm like, dude, listen to the thing. And I like the way how I can play on them. I really feel, we've talked about this, especially the DGT model, the mixture of like a Fender kind of feel with a Gibson thing. It's perfect for me. All right. I was watching some 70s music videos, Thin Lizzy, etc., and I realized back then there were no vintage instruments. Crazy to think. Yeah, right? So when Hendrix or Clapton was playing in Cream, those were not vintage instruments. Those were new. Like, so his 59 Burst, if he was playing a 59, was in 1960, not even 10 years old, right? So it wasn't a vintage guitar. So, yeah. And the amps were the amps, and they were new. So people say, like, oh, through time that this sounds that way, and then you're listening to that early Clapton recording. A lot of what we're hearing is great guitar playing. You're hearing volume, and you're hearing like tube gear at the time. You're hearing the recording process too. And so that's a big part of it. So a lot of it's just like psychoacoustic nonsense. That's for sure. Victor B, you're building a parts caster so I can bring my ideas to life. Great. New record. Yes, I am working on a new record, Kevin. Really psyched about it. It's probably going to be more like an EP. And I've got about more than half the tunes written and demoed. And I've got everybody lined up, the band. So hopefully, if I can continue the writing process, which if I seemed a little quiet on YouTube lately, like putting out videos, it's because I'm trying to work on the record. If there's a time to go a little quiet on YouTube, it is the holiday season. So this is all kind of done on purpose because the numbers always drop near the holidays and things like that. So I'm trying to get this record done. And it is unlike any other records that I've done. So I'm super psyched about the direction. And so into it, totally into it. Bill Avanda, I don't care about looking young anymore. There's not much you can do about that, right? I care about not looking terrible. So anybody knows me, I'm, you know, people laugh at the way I eat because I'm pretty super health conscious kind of guy. Have been for years, which is good. I think it's good. But yeah, some days I'm like, I just gotta let it go. Anyway, transparent. I bought a bunch of loads of pedals that were interesting for the first few weeks, and many were getting sold later, or waste of time and money. Yeah, that's really the big thing. It's so easy to get everybody like it's like a dopamine hit, right? I mean, I love getting a new pedal. I was looking at some stuff last night. I'm not saying I'm, immune to it, but I do have to. I do go. You get everything. It sounds great. The setup I have right now. I mean, like sounds amazing. So just stop. Now, if there's different sounds that you want, right? If you want different reverbs and delays and shimmer things, that's different. But another overdrive, I found, got so many in the closet. I'm thinking of doing a purge soon too of like all these pedals that I just don't use. Great ones. I'm just like, yeah, it's great. Just didn't really bond with me, or it didn't beat some of the Vemram stuff or the KTR or anything like that, or the Manus, which is on the board. Just the staples, and then there's the variations on them. So kind of. And I really like the sound of amp distortion. I'm truly kind of pushing this 4-cable method thing. I'm working really hard to get that working. Don't really get the power amp distortion, but a lot of the amps I'm using right now are a little more preamp gain. Because getting the power amp stuff, that would require me to bring like a power station or something like that, and I'm not doing that. Okay. I don't care about the name on the headstock anymore. If it feels good to me and sounds great, great. I totally don't care about the name on the headstock. Now, there is still a thing about it saying Fender and it looking like a worn Fender. I know, I get that. I do. But obviously I don't care so much about it because this is a great guitar. I've just sent my Mike Landau Strat to Michael Tuttle to get refretted because it's a fret job. I think it might have had a refret at some point. Guitar was not great, It's a great guitar, but it didn't play great. So for me, I don't know, right off the bat, someone like Michael or another custom builder, just Sir Anderson, insert name here, makes a great guitar, and I don't care as much about that anymore. I think a lot of that, for me, okay, so let's talk about that just for a second. Some of that's for me in the professional realm, like if I'm doing like a vintage blues gig, like it depends on what the gig is. I might bring the Fender, because if someone's hiring you, like some people can be very traditional, like, I'm not going to bring a PRS to a blues gig that I'm maybe being hired on, which doesn't happen anymore anyway, but, because they're not going to want that. I might bring the vintage Strat or, the fake Strat I have, the fake relic that I have, or just like this black Mike Landau Strat that I have that's aged or something. I'd probably bring a Fender or a Gibson to that gig because I think as a professional, that's what they're going to want. I've come across it all the time. I remember, going to a band and audition, and they were like, "Do you own a Gibson?" And I'm like, "Oh, you didn't like my whatever it was at the time." So yeah, so I get it. That's knowing the gig. That's having the right tool for the job. But for me, I don't care anymore, because this is better than any Fender I've ever owned. Okay. Yep, Kurt Schaffenberg, it's all about resonance and and feel, isn't it? Hard to define, but you know it when you put it in your hands. True for my Les Paul and my favorite. We didn't need to plug it in to make the buy decision. For sure, totally. Like, I was in Italy recently, and my friend Hermano, I hooked up with him. It was pouring rain. My wife wasn't feeling well. I was in Bologna, and he met me there because he used to live there. And he's like, hey, it was pouring. We'd done some sightseeing, and then suddenly everything started to pour. He's like, hey, you want to go to the guitar store? I'm like, sure. And they had like a 54 Black Beauty Les Paul reissue. I'm like, oh, and I picked it up, and just I strummed one chord, and I was like, oh boy, this is a really nice guitar, and it was the right weight. It did not weigh like 12 pounds. So yeah, right away I knew like if I, I lusted after because I really want a custom. I just love the way a black Les Paul looks. But every one that I've tried has always been really, really heavy. And I don't play Les. It would just like that's a want, not a need. Like they would be cool, but I know I would never play it because unless it were really light. And then in that case, I'm not really gonna bring that on a gig. So I'm gonna probably bring this because etc. Doesn't mean I don't want these things anymore. Because guitars are the coolest thing ever, and just look like a Black Beauty. Just they look so good. Makes me think of Thin Lizzy and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, you just know when you pick up a guitar, you strum a few chords on it, you're like, yep. If I had unlimited funds, I would probably buy this guitar, and it would sit on the shelf with a few other ones. Hello Kitty, not out of the question then. Well, all things in. Yeah, I wouldn't play that. But you know what I'm saying. Do you still care about the tuner and the headstock or playing in shorts? Oh, yeah. No tuner and a headstock. No playing in shorts. No. I know people get really crazy about the tuner and the headstock because I made a comment about that a while ago. I guess you can get away with this little one like that if you really needed to, I know some of my favorite players do that, like Mike Landau. He does that. So you got this kind of like that. I guess it's not bad. But, I don't know. Guitar is the sexiest thing in the world. It's the bigger tuners that just drive me a bit mental. And also, just really on a strict thing, I just like having a tuner on the floor because I can silence everything. That's a real practical thing. If I'm doing a workshop somewhere and I just, I might have a headstock tuner, but I'm with you. Nope. Shorts, come on. I'm not playing in shorts. Or sandals. Shorts and Birkenstocks. Maybe you're playing in Jimmy Buffett's band when he was alive. Maybe, but no thanks. Good luck with the new record. I know it will sound great. Thanks. I've played it, tracks for some of my friends, and it's been well received. So I'm really happy about that. All right. Jeff, trying to stay on theme. Are you recording at home? Which DAW do you use? And do you care about or don't care about? Okay. It's a good question. I'm using Logic. I will be recording a lot of the guitars at home, and maybe some in the studio, depending on what it is. But hold on. Budgetarily, a lot of it comes to play. I think the performance would be better. Me getting sounds performance like the record I did with Robin. There's certain things I'm really happy with, and other things I'm not as happy with. Just because the way the record was recorded, and the amount of time we had, and some of my performances, just me, So I would like to have had maybe a little more time on the guitars, a better home recording situation. So there's things that I learned a lot from that record. I'm proud of that record. But things that I can remedy now by recording at home. Also, giving myself the option to reamp if I want. So I'm going to record a dry signal. And I am talking to a friend of mine who you may or may not know online, who's going to probably mix the record. I'll release all this information when it's ready. So I'm going to do that. It's mostly electric guitar, so it will either be done. I've got a mic here. I could maybe get that going. The aux, in between that, the aux, the fractal, and some plugins. I've gotten some sounds that I really like, and certain little tricks that make a big, big difference. I have found is adding. You can do it in the aux, but I do it sometimes in my DAW. Is adding in like a room reverb. So I have the UA Apollo, and the Ocean Way Studio plugin, which they just had now as a part of their streaming pack. I add a little room to that, and suddenly a plugin sounds amazing. Like, I've sent it to friends, and they're like, "Wow, where'd you record that? Like, where'd you record those guitars? Sounds amazing." I'm like, "That's just the Plenty plugin from Neural, and the reverb on that mixed in with some reverb from the Universal Audio stuff." So, if I had an unlimited budget, oh, I would love to go to a big studio and do all that. I just don't, and I don't know if that's I just don't have the budget for it. So I'm more interested in the record coming out exactly the way I wanted to, as opposed to kind of settling a little bit. Like, that was the best I could do in the studio. I don't want to have to do that. Okay, I don't give two bleeps whether someone understands why we dig relics or not. Oh yeah, right? Totally. We talked about that. Relics is stolen valor. Yeah, I got 2 old vintage guitars. Do you? No. Okay, so shut up. That I have worn down dramatically. My 64, I put a lot of wear on that. Anyway, I'm with you in that one, Richard. Bill, you got a few questions here. Okay. Which version of the Vemram Shanks do you have? I don't know. I only the Shanks ODS. I don't know if did they put out different versions of it? I don't know. I know the guys, I don't know if they changed it. I have 2 of them, an older one and a new one. One for each board, because I found myself ripping it off of each board and putting it on there. So I gave them a buzz and they sent me one over. So I don't know what version of it is. I'm not aware that they changed it. What do I know? They both sound the same. I didn't notice anything different. I do turn the bass all the way down on it. I don't have the gain up very high. I kind of run it like a, overdriven amp that way, and then I push something in the front of it. So maybe that will help. Have you ever played Robin's Telly? I picked it up at one of his clinics. Did he let you do that? He let you pick up his guitar? And of course, like you, he sounds good and everything. I had his Telly at my house for about a month. He was going on vacation. He was doing something. And we had done a gig in New York. He's like, "Hey, man, can I give my Telly to you?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, can you just take it home with you? And then I'll, you can send it. You can send it like, Rick, his tech. I think he was going on vacation. I don't know what he was doing. 3 weeks. I had it for like 3 weeks. So I said, "Do you mind if I play?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." So that was an eye opener. Having that guitar for a while. That was my first time I had spent a fair amount of time with a vintage guitar, and that made me want to get a vintage guitar, which brings me back to our initial conversation. What all these experiences have given me with some of the vintage guitars is I know what to look for in guitars now, in new guitars as well as vintage guitars. Not all vintage guitars have those qualities. And Matt Schofield put it best on my channel. He said, "Not all vintage guitars are great, but the best guitars I've played happen to be vintage." And I agree with him. But then there's the cost, all those things that are involved with it. But when you learn what a good guitar is, it really narrows down, as Kurt was saying. I think was it Kurt? Or is it? I'm coming back. Yeah, Kurt. Yeah. You just know. When you pick up a good guitar, you just start to kind of know what it is. And so by going through a lot of guitars and trying a lot of vintage guitars, I've learned a lot, and I know what to look for. And I've made this conversation. Like, a few of my friends have bought guitars off me, and they're like, "Dude, a friend of mine bought a Strat that I had. I really liked it. Just the neck was way too big for me. I used it on some videos. Had it a few years ago as a vintage, like a 54 reissue, super light, great guitar, great sounding guitar. But the neck was massive. And I tried, but I couldn't get with it. I tried playing it standing up, and it's just too big. I don't play well on a really large neck. So a friend of mine, I traded it in to Watchtower Guitars towards my semi-hollow DGT, which I use all the time. And my friend took it at the store, and he's like, "Man, this guitar is great. Why did you sell this?" And I'm like, "Well, all my guitars are great because I know how to pick a good guitar. So they're all really good because that's why I chose them." Excuse me. So that's by having been in the vintage guitar world, helping people buy vintage guitars, I know what makes a good guitar. So that was the most useful thing I learned about that experience, and I may have spoken about before, where I was helping somebody pick out their vintage guitar collection. What a gig, right? And so I learned a lot about the vintage world. I learned that a lot of them are terrible. I learned that it's a pretty shifty world, for sure. Really shifty. especially with Fenders. Was that the original neck on that body? Is that maybe the same year, but it's not the same? That's not the original body with that neck. There's a lot of that goes on, lots and lots. Refins, all sorts of stuff, all sorts of nonsense, especially in the Fender world. And I just realized that what a really great guitar is. So my PRSs that I own, as I've mentioned before, I chose them because I just chose the ones that I thought that spoke to me. So there you go. I have played Robin's Dumble many times. Yeah. It's great. Yeah, it's amazing. And it was one of those kind of funny things when he starts playing it, you're like, oh, or when you plug in and you go, wow, that's the Dumble. So that was a bit eye-opening too. The most eye-opening thing about playing that amp, as was equally eye-opening about playing this, as is equally eye-opening about playing that, or any of the Two Rocks, or any good amp, is if you turn it up and you play it the way it was designed to be played. So the Dumble is amazing. It sounded great, and it was its own thing. So that was like that sort of Fender. They're all the DNA is all the same in the beginning. Fender, Marshall, Vox, and then like Orange and other things. But the Dumble had a different thing, and I like that thing because it's very percussive and fast. So it kind of reminds me of like the Super Lead. I like a faster amp. So there's things about it that I like. But if you ever get an opportunity to play any really good amp at volume, if you ever played a Marshall Super Lead or 50-watt Marshall non-master volume amp through a 412 cabinet at volume, it's a real, I hate to use the term game changer, but it really puts things into perspective. That's really important if you ever get a chance to do that. He went to the bathroom, so I didn't exactly have permission. You picked up his guitar while he was in the bathroom. You broke the cardinal rule. You never pick up somebody's guitar. He and I have had that discussion. He gets crazy about somebody playing his guitar without asking him. He gets mental. And there's been times where we've been hanging out, and I'm like, hey, man, if I check out the guitar? He's like, no. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I don't want you playing it. I'm like, okay. Like, just me and him. I'm like, all right, it's your guitar. I get it. So, yeah, if he caught you picking up, he would be really upset. Jason Carter. This is a great question. I thought I covered it, but do you care what other people think about you as a guitarist anymore? Not as much as I used to. I will be honest. Yeah, of course, sometimes. Because everybody wants the respect of your peers or something like that. Everybody wants that. I think that's more important to me than anything else, is that you kind of get the respect of your peers, because that's what everybody kind of, like I said, would want. I used to care more about it. And if you know who my friends are, I've got some pretty good guitar player friends. So it's to be in that league, deservedly or not, is kind of intimidating at times. So I can really beat myself up. But then I just started to go, one thing that really turned it around for me was Robin Ford asking me to do a record with him and play in his band. So the feeling of that, like, well, you may not like my guitar playing, but Robin Ford does. So piss off. That was a big thing for me, I have to say. And then the respect of those peers, people I looked up to, asking me to do things with them, playing with some of my heroes, that made a big difference for me. But sure, I do care mostly what those people think. I don't care what the YouTube guy thinks. I mean, there's so many horrible people out there, the comments they post, and I'm just like, let's just hear you play, or whatever, dude. Like, if you're that lame, if you're that unhappy a human being, yeah. And guitar player, I mean, musicians are artists or people. Everybody's fucked up. It takes a lot of work on yourself to look at another guitar player. Hopefully I'm at this point that I say, I do really mean this. I love seeing great guitar players. I may get a little jealous inside or competitive with myself. Like, not to copy them or anything, but just if somebody's clearly on their game, that makes me a little crazy because I'm maybe not as on my game. Um, and then, okay, that brings up another conversation. Like, what is your game? If you're gigging out a lot, that's the game. If you're not, if you're doing courses and YouTube videos and working on a record and all these sorts of things like that, you're not in fighting shape. Like touring and gigging. So when you see like a guy who's on the road all the time just killing it, there's only one way to get that good. And that is being on the road and doing gigs. That's it. Like we talked about this, like, so, if you're really good in the dojo, maybe like you're a black belt in the dojo, but you got to a real competition or like a real fight and get your ass handed to you, it's because that's not real. You know what I mean? Like, so when you're on a gig and people are laying down and throwing down, that's when you know where stuff is. And that takes a while. That's another muscle that you really need to work. So do I care what other people think about as a guitarist player anymore? Some people, yes, I care what my peers think sometimes. But that's me. But ultimately, at the end of the day, not so much anymore. Because I'm fortunate to have some really good, honest friends who I feel like I got my own thing to a certain extent. And hopefully that on the new record, you'll hear more of that. Yeah, people say like I know it's you when I hear it. So that's to me the most important thing. Where do you get your awesome hats? Well, a few different places. I shop around for them. Hats are weird because they all don't fit the same. So I live in New York, so there's more hat stores available. So you can go in and try a bunch of things on, and you try something on, you're like, I'm not wearing that. People ask me why I wear hats, and people are like, nice hat. I'm like, well, I got no freaking hair, and I look like an eraser on a camera with my Scottish white face. There you go. So and a gray beard, so I end up looking like an eraser. As my friend put it. So there we go. That's what the hat's for. That's funny. Let's tell you, precariously perched on top of a stool that he was sitting on, not even a stand. You seem to be pretty nonchalant about. Oh, he doesn't care about the guitar itself. Like I own his old '53 Les Paul, and he would put that in overhead in a crappy gig bag, or in the back of the van. He would just put it on top, and I'm like, So it's the picking up of his guitar without asking him that's some dangerous territory with Robin. And I get it. I don't want anybody picking up my guitar I don't know. If you ask, I'm totally cool about it. If somebody just picked it up, I'd be like, dude, no, nobody. That's a cardinal rule with guitar players that you don't just pick up and start playing their stuff. Are you celebrating that Scotland qualifying for the World Cup? Now, I'm happy for Scotland and I'm happy for my family. I did know nothing about sports in any way whatsoever, but I am happy for my cousins who were very happy about the whole thing. So good for them. But I mean, if the Yankees won the World Series, whatever. New York, yay. But I don't care. I miss the sports gene entirely. I can appreciate it, but I'll watch the World Cup. I'll do that. Maybe go to a bar in the neighborhood and watch the World Cup. But all right. So any more questions or thoughts that you had? So you guys feel the same way though? Like I do really. I've gotten to this point where I'm pretty. Hopefully it continues that I just don't really care as much about anything, and in a good way. Most interested in what I'm doing, and I think all the people who I admire the most never really cared what anybody else did, and I think that's. I wish I'd been a little bit more in touch with that earlier. I think probably part of my problem, quotation problem, went to music school. I started getting into that real Guitar Hero world, if that makes sense, and that's super competitive. And when the Eric Johnsons exist, or the kids who are, I say kids, whatever, more than half my age, who have more chops than I've ever had or will ever have, it's a little daunting. So I can't try to keep up with that. I don't. And why they can do it? So I'm just the strive to be more individual. And all my favorite players are the ones who sound like themselves. So I was talking to one of the guys who's on here right now, Adrian, about Jeff Beck earlier. Like, I still can't believe he's gone, but it's just such a unique voice that I don't think I have that unique a voice, but I'm working on it. Like, that to me is just um, playing music, right? And just being myself and trying to express what I'm trying to say as a human being from one human being to another human being. That's all I'm kind of really caring about now. Of course, if I make mistakes, I get angry with that, and that's because I'm not practicing enough. So there's not saying you shouldn't be practicing. Practicing is huge. So mistakes on gigs are usually you're not practicing enough. You haven't rehearsed your songs enough. That's stuff that you have to do. I'm not. So when I'm talking about like technique, I'm not as interested anymore. I'm not as interested in shredding or having this, next level of crazy technique. Just it's not going to happen for me unless I put a lot of effort into it, and I don't find it that exciting. And I got a little bit of hand issues at times, and I find they've been much more under control, thanks to Michelle at Virtual Hand Care, who was on my show a long time ago. Been working with her, so things are getting way better. But certain things will aggravate my hand. I'm like, yeah, just don't do that. Doesn't matter. Still, doesn't that big stretches with your pinky. It's not like it hindering your playing in any way. So things I want to think about. Um, okay. Um, check out a small guitar builder in South Jersey called Ludo. Pete makes some really cool guitars. There's something in the South Jersey water. So many good players in that area. Tri-state area, man, as they call it. Yeah, there's a lot of great builders. I'm kind of once again, I like Michael, and I go to Matt at 30th Street Guitars in Manhattan for repairs. He's the best. Um, I mean, you don't even do that with bicycles or cars. The protection of one's own private property is natural to the human race. Um, I must have missed something earlier. Um, okay, I missed what that was about. Okay, you mentioned living in New York. Do you gig out much? Not as much as I used to. Not as much as I would like. Um, I would like to gig out more, but I'm a bit lazy. Um, and I have found that when I used to gig out a lot more, I got a little tired of it. I love the performing, but I don't love necessarily getting home at 3 in the morning anymore. And I really don't love humping gear. And I'm really not interested in playing music that I don't want to play. And I used to do more of those gigs, like the sideman guitar stuff. I just didn't find it all that satisfying. So I just like doing my gig. And I have to be careful if I keep on, playing out with an instrumental trio or quartet in New York. There's only so many places you could play, and then it's diminishing returns. The curse of a steady gig in New York is like, oh, I'll see you next week, and then that never happens. So I try not to over gig that stuff. I would like to play more, if more people kind of hired me to do fun gigs, but it's kind of my head's up my own butt right now. So, and as a result of being like that, people just think I don't play other gigs. I just do my gig. So kind of a little bit catch 22. But yeah, I do go to play the bitter end. Probably gonna be there in January. We were looking for something in September, December, but they only like later gigs, like 10:30, and most of my audience is not going to come into a 10:30 gig. So I really want to be cool to the club too. I usually can get a fair amount of people in on an 8 o'clock gig, because my audience is not 19-year-olds. Everyone wants to be home. Um, oh yeah, Castle Anthrax. Just love that name. When others are doing well in life, I'm happy for them. Why wouldn't I be? Right? A lot of people aren't though. Like, it's that personal responsibility thing of like, well, I mean, there's things that are beyond our control, but I can control, hopefully, that. And I'm much happier since I stopped becoming jealous of other guitar players. So if I hear someone who's a great guitar player, I just love it. I just love hearing somebody who's great because it makes me love the guitar and it makes me want to dig into doing it again. So yeah, I'm with you on that. A significant point in a man's life where he stops worrying about what others think and worry about being true to himself and someone that he is happy, that he himself is happy with. Exactly, man. Brazil rocks. That's exactly the point. for sure. And that's kind of where I feel like I'm at, and all my, like if we talk about with Robin, he doesn't care. Just does his thing. Anybody has anything negative, he's like, Miles Davis liked the way I played, whatever. It's a good point, right? Um, Nice hat, Jeff. Thank you. What type of gigs would you bring that Friedman to? I have brought on my gig. So my gig is kind of morphed a bit. It's a bit more heavy, the new record, or more rock. I'd say heavy. That's weird. It's not a blues record in any way, but neither is any of my records. None of my records have blues tunes on them. So it's like some of the stuff that from my first record, That Direction. So it's basically a Marshall with an FX loop and control of volume. I would just be happy just bringing my true rock too. But on my last gig at the bitter end, I brought the Friedman, and I really enjoyed playing through it. So either of these two amps, and Eli over at Two Rocks kind of tweaking some stuff for me, so that could be fun too coming up. But an overdrive amp, like an amp that's got some overdrive, just like I grew up playing, like the Marshalls and stuff. The Friedman, this is the Jakey Lee model. If you notice, it looks a little different. I changed the head shell. I got a black one as opposed to the red one because I think it looks cooler on camera. And I don't have any red cabs. It just stuck out, so I got a black head shell. It's just a Marshall. So for me, like it sounds vintage. Sounds vintage. And I got the overdrive channel, which is like that's a plexi side. This is like the 800. Right? So yeah, I mean, I don't think it sounds particularly modern or metal or something. It just sounds like a good Marshall. I had some guy. I was did the UA audio, the UA Lion giveaway, which somebody won. Somebody won that, so that's been done. The UA Lion. If you didn't win, I'm sorry. A guy down in Jacksonville, Florida won. And I posted, and some guy goes, "Oh, this sounds. Oh, I hope I win that." And he's commented. He's like, "I love your playing. I hope, but I really like your vibey bluesy stuff, and not that Yngwie stuff that you do. So I hope you don't do any more of that." I'm like, "Fuck yourself." like what? What kind of comment is that? You know what I mean? It's kind of very funny. Like, I'm like, whatever, man. It's who I am. So I didn't care. I just responded. I said, that's probably one of the best backhanded compliments I've ever gotten. For me, the challenge is to hear your own voice and like what I hear. All I hear is that I'm working my whole life. Yeah, it's true. I'm still working on it too. But I've gotten to a point sometimes I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good. I'm very critical of what I play, for sure. But, you kind of get to a point like, if I'm hearing Alan Halsworth, and I just can't do it, Oh, wow. This is from Victor Beebe. I got electrocuted, which left scars on my right hand. That sucks. The scars affected my ability to stretch my fingers, so I have to play around with disability. And you probably sound great. You got to work. Keith Richards talks about that too. So yeah, I'm working around some limitations that are happening for playing for 40 years, like we all have. Did you stop caring about Evil? Where is he? Is that where he's left? He's around here somewhere. The Evil Knievel. I think he's over there. I think he kept on falling off of the amps and stuff, and so I forgot for a while. Friedman would sell more amps if they got rid of the childish model names. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that either. I like his amps, man. He knows how to make great sounding Marshalls. So this is the Jakey Lee 50. I feel pretty good about that as opposed to some of the other names. I'm with you. Yeah, come on. I find Jack Roush's YouTube videos very inspiring. Jack's consummate jazz influenced R&B guitar player. He's the exact opposite of a shredder. That's all about music dynamics and taste. Hey, a lot of shredders are about dynamics, musical and taste. I think Yngwie Malmsteen is a freaking amazing guitar player, especially when he was younger. I really like Jack's videos. I like the way Zakk Wylde plays. I like the way Gary Moore played blues and stuff. So I think it's all about. I think I'm not knocking Jack. I think Jack's freaking great guitar player. I've never met him. Certainly great. But, shredding, it's just music. Like if you hear some fast stuff, I love hearing guys who can shred and rip. If that's all they do, I'm not so interested. But if you listen to, like, I say early Yngwie because it's the stuff I'm most familiar with, some of the most amazing vibrato, bends, feel, time, tone, all of that. So to me, I can listen to that just as much. It's when it all becomes the same thing. Now, some of the guys who are the really tasteful slow players all the time, sometimes I just want to hear them throw down. I'm like, yeah, that's great. Can you kick some ass right now for me now? Because I really need you to kick some ass, So those are my favorite players. Like, the guys who walk softly but carry a big stick. Robin, if we talk about that guy, has so much stuff that he doesn't do. And then when he pulls it out, you're like, son of a John Scofield, Scott Henderson. I'm thinking about like rock guys. Jeff Beck too. Like he would just kind of do a subtle thing. You pull something out of his back pocket and you're like, oh my God. Mike Landau, all those guys where that's that mixture. So I love a guy who plays super tastefully, but then also can punch you in the face. That to me is super important. Someone who's really good at that. Because I come from a hard rock background, so I want to hear that Gary Moore energy, right? With great power comes great responsibility. Screw that, says 58-year-old Spider-Man. Totally. Oh, what's up? I've been watching your videos for a while and picking stuff up. What would be the best place to start for your lessons to purchase? I think the Blues Bootcamp, depending what you're into, it starts at a very early intermediate or late early intermediate early, and it gets pretty in depth. But if somebody said to me, I like the way you teach blues, I like more around blues, I think that's the course to get, honestly. Lots of stuff in it, songs, soloing, working on technique. That's sort of the course that I would definitely point somebody towards if they're just I want to pick up a course that's laid out, that's fun to work through. Not that my triad courses aren't fun to work through. The triad courses are much more like, these are your triads. Let's work through them methodically. The Blues Bootcamp, I break it into 3 sections. There's repertoire, technique and applied fingerboard knowledge and all that stuff, and then vocabulary. So you have 3 different things to work on that all kind of come together. So I think it's the most well-rounded educational thing I've put out. If you want everything. Now, I have courses on, repeated licks and things that are more specialized. This would be the one that, I need to work on something. I want a method. I want to have something to practice, and I want it next week. I want to have the next thing to go to after I've worked on this, or next month or whatever, because there's way more info. It's like 7 hours long. It's way more than you can do in 6 weeks. It's more like a year, honestly. So I would say that's the course to check out. And like BB just put there, it's 72% off. And, all my courses, if you get it and you don't dig it, just let me know. I'll give you a refund your money. I have a lot of faith in the courses, and had very few requests for refunds. So I'm happy to hear that as well. Robin has forgotten more than I'll ever know. Yeah, a lot of people too. All right, BV, it's getting late for him, and I want to not keep him online too long. I'll be here next week, which is the day before Thanksgiving, here in the States. So, BV, if you're around next week, let me know. And I appreciate everyone being here. If you want to help out the channel, hit like and subscribe. Tell your friends. It's a jungle out there on the old YouTubes, getting people to watch your stuff. It's become way more difficult to get anything known. People tell me, I didn't even know you had more videos out. Like, you guys probably found this, right? You watch a video on something, and that's all you're recommended. And suddenly you're like, hey, whatever happened to that cooking channel I really liked that I used to get videos, that I'm subscribed to? So yeah, that is, so like and subscribe. That really helps me get pushed further. And if you really want to help the channel, pick up a course. Go over to JM Guitar Lessons. We've got tons of courses there. I have my inner circle where we do bi-weekly lessons, and we have a chat forum, and you get all the courses, you get a seat at the master classes, you get everything, and we do some hanging out on the video chats, which is fun. And then there's the boot camp, 72% off for over 7 hours of guided lessons. There you go. There's my pitch. Hope you guys check it out if you have not already. I would appreciate it. And I will see everyone next week. Thanks so much, as always, for being here. And hopefully this was fun and educational. And, who cares? Just do your thing. At the end of the day, who cares? Just do your thing and be happy. Which is not that easy to do, but in the world we live in. But I've been happier lately that I'm working on my own record without any influence as to what I think I should be making. How's that? All right, guys. I will see you next week. Have a good one. Thanks.